everybody. Hey. Wow, there's a lot of people from up here. All right. Recently, I gave a talk a couple of times where I took the role of a historian from the year 2056, looking back over the history of or the major developments in technology, specifically around civic technology during the first quarter of this century. Now, in this talk, I shared with the audience some of the ideas that I discovered while time traveling with my friends last summer. Now, in the talk, we went decade by decade, covering how one technology led to another, and how the entire 25 or 30 years between 2000 and around 2030 fit together as a historical period. The talk itself was a ton of fun to prepare for, and it's actually that preparation process that I want to talk about tonight, specifically the time travel. So unfortunately, while I was preparing for the talk, my time machine was in the shop, so instead of traveling to the future more quickly than we would at a normal pace, what we did was what I'm calling first-person conversational explorations of hypothetical futures. What that means is that I hosted a series of dinners where I invited people who I thought would have interesting perspectives on society or technology or the future in general. And for an hour or two each of these dinners, we talked about a particular focus topic. And even though this was in preparation for a technology conference, or a talk at a technology conference, we realized that tech doesn't develop in a bubble, so we really had to understand the trajectory of society in general in order to understand the trajectory of technology in society. So I would like to see other people take these excursions to the future, and so I want to just share a few of the tips that I learned in my own exploration. So my first tip is for all time travelers is to know who you are. So my recommendation for this, know who you are in the future specifically. My recommendation is to consider who you are and what informs your perspective in the present, and use that as a projection onto the future. So if you're a teacher and you work with young children, what does that look like in 40 years? Use your experience and your perspective to inform your journey into the future. My second tip is to be courageous in the events that you inject into the timeline. One of the most fun aspects of improvisational time travel is that you're never quite sure where you're going to end up. And on a related note, be specific about those events. So instead of just saying that, California is going to fall into the ocean because of an earthquake, explain that the big one happened in 2027, and because of it, Bakersfield becomes some of the most coveted beachfront real estate in the United States, and during the real estate boom of 2040. So these next few tips are specifically for people who want to guide these conversations. My first tip is to not let the conversation drift too much into optimism. One that's too optimistic feels ersatz, lacks substance. It lacks because we'll never actually solve all of the problems of the present. And even when we do solve those problems, everyone may not feel the same about the solutions that we create. On the flip side, it's important to not let the conversation be too pessimistic, which is really easy to do these days. Because even though there are plenty of problems in the world, everyone knows deep down that the world is not actually hopeless. My third tip for people who are interested in hosting these kinds of conversations is to strive to have as much diversity as you can present, whatever that means to you, because everyone's going to bring their own perspectives and their own experiences with them into the future, and it's important to have a breadth of those. I didn't have enough of an international perspective at my conversations, and so most of the future that we talked about was in the United States, when there's an entire world of future to explore. And my last tip is if you're not too optimistic, you're not too pessimistic, you have a diverse group of discussions, then some of your conversations are going to weigh heavily on different people for different reasons. And so it's important when you return to the present to allow some time for people to openly and honestly discuss how they feel about the future that you just visited. So I think it's important for people to get out to the future, to explore the future in this way, and to constantly historicize the present. It's a good reminder that we're never living at the end of history, but constantly in the middle of it and constantly in transition. So if one of these conversations sounds interesting to you, if it's something that you're interested in doing, I shared all of the resources that I collected over time on my GitHub. Please go out and explore the future. 대반 세상이 참 좋아